Hello, great souls. Welcome to our Living Yoga Satsang, Reflections on Autobiography of a Yogi. Let's begin together with a prayer. Heavenly Father, Divine Mother, friend, beloved God, great masters of self-realization, Jesus Christ, Babaji Krishna, Lahiri Mahashaya, Swami Sri Yukteswar, and Paramhansa Yogananda ji, saints of all religions, friend and guide Swami Kriyananda, we humbly bow to you all. Guide us in our time together as we study this sacred book. Help us to receive the gifts offered to each one of us individually, to hear what is needed today to help us in our journey. Help us to receive thy divine living presence that is with us in this moment and always. May we share all the grace that flows to us freely with all whom we meet. Om. Peace. Amen. Okay, so this week we're looking at chapter 31. Last week, chapter 30, the law of miracles. Each chapter is inspiring, so when I say that chapter was inspiring, this one, of course, is as well. It's a nice segue into this chapter. So chapter 31, an interview with the Sacred Mother. The Sacred Mother in this context is the wife of Lahiri Mahashaya. So in the path of self-realization, which is the path that we follow with Ananda, these are based on the teachings in this book of Paramhansa Yogananda, there are 5 gurus in the lineage of the path of this path of self-realization. So it's when we say the prayer, as I opened with, Jesus Christ, Babaji Krishna, Lahiri Mahashaya, Swami Sri Yukteswar, and Paramhansa Yogananda. In what Yogananda said, and it is that Jesus appeared to Babaji. So in this line, in this path, it is said that both Jesus and Babaji are guardians of this earth, of this world. So they are watching and guiding the spiritual evolution of this planet. In essence, we could say they're in charge. So they are the true power that is the overarching power of this planet. So that's why Jesus is mentioned in this line of gurus, because he came to Babaji and the two of them together are working on behalf of the planet. So Babaji was Lahiri Mahashaya's guru. And later there's a chapter, a beautiful, inspiring chapter of Lahiri meeting Babaji and what happens there. So anyway, because I'm pretty sure we have not covered that yet. I don't have to look down to find it, but it's a beautiful story and it's an amazing story. So Lahiri then is the guru, the teacher of Sri Yukteswar, who is the guru we know, because we've studied that up to this point, of Yogananda. So that kind of gives you an idea, if you didn't know the lineage, who is Lahiri Mahashaya? Well, he is the kind of the guru of Yogananda's guru. He also was the guru of Yogananda's parents. So, Yogananda as a baby was brought to Lahiri Mahashaya, and Lahiri Mahashaya blessed him and predicted that Yogananda would have a spiritual life, that his life would be spiritually focused, and he would be a spiritual engine in this world. So this is about Lahiri Mahashaya. It begins that way, the chapter, and an interview with his wife. Lahiri was a householder. When he met Babaji, he was already married. He worked for the railroad. He was an accountant, and he happened to be stationed in a place there at the foothills of the Himalayas. And this, I'm telling you a little bit about the story, but that's when he meets Babaji. And once he meets Babaji, and this is again part of the yoga teachings, is that a guru, the relationship with a student, disciple and guru, is last lifetimes. So he was re-meeting, right? So it was an encounter of meeting again his guru. Well, when that happened, he was ready to forsake everything in his life, and he was ready to just be with his guru, but that was not his destiny, and it was not what was being asked of him. And Babaji said, no, you must go back to the life that you have, and you will demonstrate for the world what it is to be a householder, and that it is possible to be married, to have a family, to have a worldly job, and be spiritually dedicated, and to awaken spiritually. So that was his role. And it is considered in many respects, when we're looking at our spiritual life, the more difficult path. So I say that because in some ways, it's more difficult because you have a lot of things to contend with, right? In terms of your spiritual life. There are many things that can make it difficult to have a regular sadhana, to meditate, and just encounters in, I had a dear friend who would say, it's easy to be a saint when you live alone. And she was saying that because of partnership for her own experience. But the truth is, it's not necessarily, it's not automatic that happens. But it is true that it's being a householder and having a spiritually focused life takes a certain extra effort because of the way that energetically we're easily pulled off into other directions. So Lahiri stands as a shining example of that possibility. As all the masters do, they show us our ultimate capacity to be fully awakened and fully self-realized. And the teaching of yoga is that this is already a reality for us. We're in a process when we're spiritually awakening, we're remembering who we are. So the teaching of yoga is that we are already whole and complete, and a perfect expression of divinity is that it's been covered over and it's been veiled from our awareness. And so the practice of yoga, the teachings of yoga, a spiritually focused life helps dissolve those veils, that more and more we encounter who we really are. So that's the other thing I would say about the masters. They demonstrate perfection. They're able to do it perfectly, not so that we measure ourselves and feel less than, but so that we keep moving forward, that we recognize what's possible for us, honoring all the while where we are. So we don't expect ourselves to demonstrate something that's beyond our capacity, and at the same time we want to keep moving toward what we're fully capable of. So in this begins with Yogananda visiting Lahiri Mahashaya's wife after Lahiri Mahashaya has left his body. And he comes, the chapter begins with Yogananda saying, "Revered mother, I was baptized in infancy by your prophet husband. He was the guru of my parents and of my own guru, Sri Yukteswarji. Will you therefore give me the privilege of hearing a few incidents of your sacred life?" And she agrees. And she shares with him some remarkable, miraculous stories. So again, last chapter, the law of miracles, now we go into some stories of miracles about Lahiri Mahashaya, which are deeply moving, so inspiring. And I guess the other thing I'm reminded in this moment, when we started these reflections, it was, and it's feeling meaningful to mention it, so I'm going to kind of come back to something I talked about at the very beginning of these talks, which is when A spiritual practice for working with scripture, and Autobiography of a Yogi is a scripture. It was written by a master, and Yogananda said his vibration is in this book. He told Swami Kriyananda that his vibration is here. So what that means is that the living presence of Yogananda is in the book, in the words, in all the stories that are shared. When we relate to that living presence, the more receptive we can be in our heart, the more open to whatever may be offered to us. It's like a divine romance, a divine friendship relationship. I'm saying that because there are certain moments, I'll say for myself, where I want to remind myself, slow down. Really hear what you're hearing, see what you're seeing, stay present to what's being offered. I feel that with these particular stories. They have, in part because they're astonishing, right? So they're dramatic, and there can be a surface way in which we relate to them. But they're told for everything in this book is being offered for a much deeper realization. And it's not always obvious what that is. I would say that part of the practice for me in reading the book and talking about it and sharing it is I recognize that I am each time gleaning something. Right? I can sense and feel, and it's been my experience, that it's so much more than I can really even understand on a conscious level. So I come to it, there's an expression from I'm trying to remember now if it's the Old Testament. So it's Moses encounters the burning bush, and he encounters God, right? So God appears to him as a burning bush, and he hears the words, "Remove the sandals from your feet. You are standing on sacred ground." That practice of pausing and honoring and recognizing what's before us, that's really what I'm speaking to in this moment. So I'm going to share some of these stories, but I'm feeling in this moment to say, hear them. I offer an invitation to you. Hear them for whatever they may be bringing you today. And I'm listening in the same way. That what do these stories offer me? Why did Yogananda share them? What's meaningful about them? They're certainly interesting, but I know my intuition tells me there's so much more to it than that. So the first story, Lahiri's wife said, she brings him upstairs to where they used to have where they used to live together before Lahiri went downstairs to a parlor area, and it was a meditation room where he then lived there all the time. But before then, when they were, after he'd seen Babaji, he comes back, so he's still living as a householder. And she brings Yogananda up to their room, and then she tells the story. She said, "It was years before I came to realize the divine stature of my husband," she began. "One night in this very room, I had a vivid dream." So her point is that she lived with him for many years before she understood who he was. And this night, she understood. She had an experience that showed her who he was. "One night in this very room, I had a vivid dream. Glorious angels floated in unimaginable grace above me. So realistic was the sight that I awoke at once. The room was strangely enveloped in dazzling light. My husband, in lotus posture, was levitated in the center of the room, surrounded by angels who were worshiping him with the supplicating dignity of palm-folded hands. Astonished beyond measure, I was convinced I was still dreaming. 'Woman,' Lahiri Mahashaya said, 'you are not dreaming. Forsake your sleep forever and forever.' As he slowly descended to the floor, I prostrated myself at his feet. 'Master,' I cried, Again and again I bow before you. Will you pardon me for having considered you my husband? I die with shame to realize that I have remained asleep in ignorance by the side of one who is divinely awakened. From this night, you are no longer my husband, but my guru. Will you accept my insignificant self as your disciple? So it's remarkable, right? She has this dream. Yogananda said our dreams can be superconscious, where we actually are experiencing something divine in the dream. She awakens, and there's her husband levitating in the room, surrounded by angels. I don't have words for what that would be like to see that, right? But it was so powerful that she thought she must be dreaming. I mean, how can this be real? And he speaks to her with an authority that allows her to recognize this is happening. I am seeing, what I'm seeing is real. My husband is divinely awakened. And so she, just falls at his feet and asks to be his disciple. And it goes on to say that he accepts her. He accepts her. And then she has a moment that she wishes that it hadn't taken her so long to recognize him. And here she is living in his presence all this time and not understanding who she's with. And his response to her is, the time was not ripe. So it's a way of comforting her to say, you weren't ready. You weren't ready. So when you were ready, it happened for you. You saw, you were ready to receive a measure of divine grace, divine understanding, divine awakening, divine support you weren't ready for before. So it's, in essence, nothing to feel badly about. And then he said, he smiled consolingly and added, much of your karma I have silently helped you to work out. Now you are willing and ready. So I want to stop with these two pieces here, because what really stood out for me, again, aside from this incredible story of her experience, is the universal component, way in which I've seen this in my own spiritual life and in the life of students and friends, that we have these experiences. I shared some last week from Asha's book, Cared For and Protected, about miracles that happen. Why do they happen? What happens when suddenly we are shown a reality beyond the physical realm, beyond what we know? And it's so powerful that it's undeniable, right? And it's a blessing. There is a blessing being offered in it. What is that blessing? And that's for us to uncover, to mine, to explore. I was talking with a friend earlier today about a powerful spiritual experience she had with a teacher, her spiritual teacher. And the teacher had spoken a truth to her she wasn't ready for. That it wasn't so much that she didn't believe her teacher, but she just wasn't ready for that truth. What's interesting that she and I were both talking about is she never forgot it. He was challenging her. He was telling her not to go in a particular direction. And she wanted to go in that direction. She wasn't ready to not go in that direction. So she never forgot his words. And she saw over time, and still sees today, he was right. Right? I mean, it was like, there it is, there's the truth. Also, what she sees and feels and felt then was a bounty of unconditional love. His love for her never changed at all. There was nothing in him that was upset by her choice. There was nothing in him that, it didn't change the truth. The truth was the truth. He accepted her and loved her unconditionally. She felt it then, she felt it throughout her journey, she feels it now. And we both were just sharing how powerful that is. That is divine love. That is true divine love. And I see that in this exchange with Lahiri Mahashaya and his wife. She begins to feel awful. Why did it take me so long? I've had students share that in yoga, with yoga postures. They'll come and they'll say, I can't believe it's taken me so long to practice this. Where have I been, right? Or they'll be practicing for a while, kind of fall away from the practice, come back, and feel like, why did I ever stop, right? It's just something that can happen in our spiritual life. It's certainly happened to me. I'll feel like, okay, I'm on a good track. This is what I want to be doing. Let nothing get in my way. We have a chant that talks about that. Move all you mountains that stand in my way. Nothing can stop my progress. And yet, things seemingly stop our progress, right? They get in the way, and suddenly, I get off track, I'm detoured, I'm doing something else. All right, I lose that sense of willingness. I lose my commitment. It can happen. And so we do everything. It's recommended. I'm going to say it's recommended, and I practice to the best of my ability to put things in place to help hold me. So that if I begin to feel not as committed, I have certain things to help me work with that. I mean, it's possible that a lack of commitment can be my path trying to head in a new direction. Okay, so if the energy's shifting, that's different than commitment. Last Sunday, our affirmation was about perseverance, and I don't remember the whole affirmation. It's lovely. If I had it right here, I would read it to you. It's this, but there's a part of it that says, my word is my bond. And the essence of the affirmation is, I won't go off and do something else before I've finished something that I've committed myself to. My word is my bond. I will finish this and then move on to something else. And it's a practice of stability and strength and loyalty and faithfulness, which is the first principle Yogananda told Swamiji in spiritual life, is loyalty. That takes a commitment of energy. And it's in the chakras. I was talking a few weeks ago about the chakras. The base chakra, the root chakra, stability, strength, security, steadfast. So to have access to that energy and to draw upon that energy with our intentions is it's a building block in the yoga life, in the yoga way of life, in the spiritual life, is having that in place. Now we want to build upon it. It's a building block. If I stay there, the energy doesn't rise, I can get stuck. So then I've got the root energy, but it's heavy, and I'm not getting anywhere because I'm not accessing the flow of the water element, fluidity, adaptability, moving with life, right? Or fire energy as we're moving up the chakras. That's willpower, mastery of self. So each one of these elements working together supports us in our spiritual journey. So here's Lahiri's wife having a divine realization of her husband, seeing this miraculous sight, feeling, and then in the midst of that, suddenly feeling bad about what took me so long. There is a teaching, a spiritual teaching, and what Yogananda said about truth is it's universal. So you'll hear it in many paths, not just one. And this is a truth I've heard in different spiritual settings. I've heard this teaching talked about, which is divine timing. And that's what Lahiri's saying. You weren't ripe. You weren't ready. So he was there, divinely realized she couldn't see it. It's helpful to have that for our own self. I remember, in fact, and it was related to Ananda, I had had deep spiritual experiences that were more than I felt I could handle. They were difficult for me to manage my ordinary householder life with such a feeling of the presence of God. So I actually had, in prayer, asked that be turned down a little bit so I could function. And I said, to God, this is a personal prayer to God. You're the center of my life. I'm not going to change that. But in terms of just mystical experiences, they felt too much for me. They just felt too much for me. That's a simple thing to say. So I sure enough, that was answered for me, and I felt more comfortable, and life was easier. And I got married, and I was very dedicated in my spiritual life as a householder. I wasn't really living to my full potential spiritually, and that message was in there. It was starting to rumble within me right before I went to my first Ananda yoga retreat. I remember it clearly. I was talking to I had a spiritual director I was working with, and I was saying, boy, I'm feeling this message from my soul. I don't understand it because my life looked good. It looked like I was spiritual enough, so why do I need to be doing more than this? But within my own soul was a feeling of I had a foot in one world, so not as Lahiri, one world and a foot in the other. So I wasn't lined up. It wasn't lined up. That's something subtle. It wasn't obvious externally. So I went on this Ananda yoga retreat, and I had a profound mystical experience of Christ. It was very serious. It was beautiful. It was profound. Interestingly, in the midst of that experience, I was filled with grief because I thought, wow, what had I done? Why did I say I don't want to experience this every day? I remembered it. I was experiencing it. And I thought, okay, I used to live in this experience. Why would I ever say I don't want to live in this experience? And what I felt so profoundly, so deeply from Christ was there's nothing to feel sad about, right? First off, what I heard in that message was, I've been with you always. There's nowhere I wasn't experiencing Christ in a particular way, but I still had invited. He still was in my life every moment, every day. Nevertheless, so all I can say is that he consoled me, right? There's nothing to feel sad about, nothing to grieve about, right? Another way of saying it, the timing, this is divine timing. So what I felt with Ananda, and it is the reason I dedicated my life to these teachings and to Yogananda. I didn't call Jesus my guru. He was my guru, but I didn't even know that word really. But I felt guidance from him to follow Yogananda, as if study him in the way, dedicate my life to these teachings in the way that I had to Jesus, and that somehow, miraculously, it would be a way for me to be faithful to Christ. It's been true. It's been true. It was quite a thing to say yes to at the time, but I felt it, just like the Divine Mother here, undeniably real. It was undeniably real. So, okay, and what I felt is that the yoga path and the yoga practices and the tools that were given, and also a community of support, would allow me to grow and expand spiritually in a way that would support me, and I would be sustained as a householder. Because I was a householder, I was married at that time. So and that's proven to be true. I haven't always lived in an Ananda community. My husband and I do now, but most of the time we didn't, because it just wasn't the right time, wasn't the moment. And then it was. There it was, clear, crystal clear for both of us. Oh, now. And it was perfect and just the right thing. So this teaching of allowing ourselves to grow authentically, to grow sincerely, to awaken in our own time, and to know that we are supported by the gurus even when we don't know who they are in our life. This is something I've seen again over and over, that Yogananda said, all the gurus support everybody. So each person, it is said, each soul has a guru, has a specific teacher, a specific path, a specific set of teachings that are uniquely suited to them. But there's not always, that's a particular point in the journey when it happens for us that feels right. And when that doesn't feel right, we haven't done anything wrong. That's not where we are in our journey. I have a student, I'm just checking time, so I'll finish the rest of the chapter next time. I'll end with this. I had a student who very much, and I could feel the authenticity and rightness of this, what she needed was to find the truth in every path. She needed that. And it was so inspiring for her and strengthening and expanding of her consciousness. So she loved Ananda, she loved the teaching, she loved the tools, she loved classes she came to that I was part of. And she also recognized it wasn't right for her to pick this as her path. And she had been to other paths that I loved equally well. Each one of them she'd see in the other. And it was right for her. So I just want to say, for her journey, that was right. And I'm not going to put in it what's before, what's behind. It's better for us to stay faithful and truthful to our own experience of awakening and trust that. And that's the heart of this first story that's shared in this chapter of divine realization and the perfect timing of it. And it's been my experience that it's true for all of us. We're given just what we need at the moment that we need it, with the support that will help us to take it in and receive it and move forward with our next step. So I offer you that today, just to ponder, be open to, and listen for in your life. Many blessings to you. Great to be with you today.